What we're seeing are landowners wanting to permanently protect these lands, and that means so much to this state's food security. All of those things that folks may take for granted, that's not there just as open land. That's there because that's an economic engine for this state. When we lose that, and we're losing 47,000 acres in California of these ag lands a year, we can't afford to do that.
Well, thank you for joining us today on Clear Conversations. We're ecstatic to have our guest today, Michael Delbar from the California Rangeland Trust. Thank you for being here, sir.
It's an honor, thank you.
You are the CEO, I should mention, of the California Rangeland Trust. And tell us just a little bit about the California Rangeland Trust. What is it and what do you all do?
So the Rangeland Trust was started 28 years ago by the California Cattlemen's Association. So at the time there was some funding available through the state sources to do conservation easements or pay for conservation easements. But there weren't any organizations in existence at the time that really understood the ranching business. So as you can imagine, if you're a ranching landowner, a conservation easement is perpetual, which is a very long time. So for a landowner to enter into such a conservation contract, they ought to do it with an organization that understands what they do, why they do it, how they do it. So cattlemen's thought, well, there's probably a handful of ranchers throughout the state that are interested. We'll just start our own land trust and see what happens. So 28 years later, the California Rangeland Trust is the largest statewide agricultural land trust in California. We just closed on our 106th family ranch in California with 433,000 acres permanently protected from Siskiyou County down to San Diego, the Nevada border to the Pacific Ocean. So we're very proud of what we've been able to do as an organization. We have, while that's impressive, in the queue of accepted applications are another 90 plus ranching families representing over 250,000 additional acres. So that tells us what we're doing is we're doing it right. And one of the reasons why we have such interest in conserving these lands by these landowners is because all of our board members are ranchers themselves or tied to the ranching industry. So that gives us some street cred that with the ranching community, and in the environmental community loves what we're doing as well because we're getting conservation work done that they may not be able to do. So it's quite an honor to be part of this organization.
Yeah, it's ranchers helping ranchers, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
And you said it there, but you had a milestone recently of over 100 ranches. Yes. What does that mean to you personally to see that happen? I mean, that is quite an accomplishment.
You know, it's really something to hit. You know, it's a milestone.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's just a milestone and many more to come. We were having our 100th ranch celebration up in Tuolumne County at the Sodelo Ranch. And I had just gotten up and made my comments about welcoming folks and talking about what we've done and achieving that 100th ranch, which we actually did last fall. But having a celebration on the land is kind of hard to do in the middle of winter. So we waited till the spring and we'd actually closed 105 at that point. And I sat down, our conservation director snuck up behind me and said, as I was talking, we just closed on our 106th.
Oh, wow.
So it was fun to be able to make that announcement to the nice crowd and say they were the first to hear. We've now closed the 106th ranch. So
it's happening that fast.
It's been a great year so far.
Yeah,
We've closed a number of projects since the first of the year.
That's really great. That is. And talk about too, you know, what would California look like if there weren't these conservation easements? I mean, paint us a picture of what California would look like.
Well, it is, you know, we've done an amazing job at protecting these 433,000 acres. Like I said, there's 250,000 additional in the queue. And while that alone is impressive, we get calls every month from additional landowners saying, we want to do this, but how long does it take? And we say, well, it takes a while. It's not, patience is definitely a virtue in this process. And they say, well, I don't have that much time. Or I've got to do something faster, or oh, okay, I'll think about it. What we're seeing are landowners wanting to permanently protect these lands, and that means so much to this state's food security. It's the production of food and fiber, but of course it's all the other, what we call ecosystem services provided from that land. That's the clean air, the clean water, that's the wildlife habitat, that's the open space. All of those things that folks may take for granted when they see these open spaces, these oak woodlands, these pastures, these green, golden rolling hills, that's not there just as open land. That's there because that's an economic engine for the state. And that's really important. We lose that, and we're losing 47,000 acres in California of these ag lands a year. Now, we all need houses. People need homes, businesses need homes, livestock needs homes, and the critters need homes. It's a balance. So we know that we have to plan accordingly, but to lose some of these landscapes that are so important for all those other benefits, we can't afford to do that, especially at a rate of 47,000 acres a year.
Way too much. You know, just as a personal aside, I grew up in the Bay Area, and I grew up around Brentwood, some of the most beautiful agricultural land around, and that was lost to development and never to come back. So that's the thing that we're talking about too, is, you know, this land will never come back into production. Once it's gone forever. So what you all are doing, I just think is really amazing, and I thank you for doing what you do. You talked a little bit about ecosystems there, so let me ask you about that, the Ecosystems Services Study. What was that? Tell me a little bit about that.
It's a great reading material if you have insomnia, but it's, no, seriously, it's a really important document. It's very academic. The executive summary is what I like to read. But what we've done is when we go to policymakers and donors or even the general public and say, protecting these lands is really important. And they say, well, how important? And you say, it's really, really important. But how do you put really, really into context? So we partnered with UC Berkeley, Dr. Lynn Hunsinger and her team back in 2019 to define monetarily really, really. So they looked at all existing studies and the different materials that are out there, and there's a lot of information here that's available in the full study that boils down to this. They looked at what's the return on investment for every public dollar that went into acquiring these conservation easements. And they studied 306,000 acres of our portfolio. Not everything we had at the time, but those were the ranches that they picked. For every public dollar that went in to acquire that conservation easement, the benefit, the return on investment, was $3.47. Now, I'm sure you would like to do this too. If I can put every dollar I had in a bucket and pull out $3.50 more from each one of those, I do that all day long. And so that kind of really defined really. But what defined really, really was that annual monetization of those ecosystem services, that open space, wildlife habitat, all those things that these ranches provide to all of us. And they looked at what is that value, what's that worth to Californians within a 50-mile radius of all these different ranches. And what they determined was annually was $1.44 billion with a B dollars. And so when we go to policymakers and they go, well, what's really, really good? It's $1.44 billion. Now that was 2020. 2019, 2020. So that's 6-year-old data. So we're partnering again with UC Berkeley to do an update to that study. So looking at the rest of our now 433,000 acre portfolio, but also give us the tools to keep that updated as we go. As we know that when we tell that story, when it was 1.4 billion was great, what is it today? You know, we've added 130,000 acres. It's probably a little bit higher.
And numbers don't lie. You know, numbers tell a story too. And that study was a lot of science data driven as well, which is what we talk about at the Clear Center as well. And you partner with UC Berkeley. I'm sure you've worked with UC Davis, with the Clear Center as well. How important is that relationship with researchers and higher ed and working with them to establish the numbers and establish the really, really, and why it's important?
You know, as ranchers, we intuitively know what we do is right. And we know we're out there working 24/7, 365, 110 degrees to minus 10, and everything in between, taking care of the stewarding our livestock and our land, producing that food and fiber. We know that's tough work. That's why not everybody does it. There's more money to be made, working 8 to 5 and having weekends off. But there's a real importance to not just the ranching families themselves, but to our communities and our culture and the state and the nation. We're less than 2% of the population, but we're feeding 100% of the people. So that's important. But how do we tell that story? Because if we say it, sometimes people go, well, that's because that's what you do. You're biased. By partnering with academia, they're doing the research. Clear Center is wonderful at this. They do the research and they come up with the truth, the facts, the science. And that is what proves more often than not, way more often than not, that what we're doing is the right thing to do. And if there's something that we could be doing better, my goodness, we'd love that. As long as we can do that economically, we'll do that. But that's the partnership that academia gives to the industry, is that we talked about street cred as far as our organization goes. That's a big part of it for the industry, is showing that yes, cows are not killing the planet. We're all good here. This is why this is important. And we can't do that on our own. We need academia and researchers like UC Davis, Clear Center.
Because sometimes sustainability is a little bit abstract. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to quantify without the numbers, without like you're saying, the science behind it as well. So that's why it is important that we work with you as well as the producers, because we want to solve the problems that you have as well too, as as producers.
Sustainability is one of those the buzzwords, right? But what's that mean to the rancher? It's being able to pass that down. If a ranch is in its 7th generation, that's kind of sustainable, isn't it? You don't get there. You don't get past generation 1 if you're not sustainable. And that concept gets lost on folks who don't have that tie to agriculture. They think that sometimes they think that there may be, you're just extracting everything and you don't care about the land, you don't care about the animals. And that can't be further from the truth. We know that. But folks, sometimes they need a little education and some help understanding that for us to be there tomorrow, we have to do it right. We have to be respectful and sustain that land, sustain those resources and those animals, whatever it is. We need to do that. That's sustainability. And when we're doing, I said, we'll do it right. And if there's some things we can do better, everybody can do something better. But it has to make sense economically. Otherwise, if we're not economically viable, that's not sustainable.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Is there one thing that you wish people knew more about ranching, and was one thing that they get wrong all the time that you're like, why can't they get this right?
We did a documentary a few years ago, and part of it that didn't make the film was a man on the street interview, because we thought we would get some folks that are going to go, we didn't get it.
Oh.
Everybody that we talked to, every one of them said, I really respect ranchers and farmers, and you guys are working hard. And so we kind of walked away and go, well, that didn't work. We were very happy about it, but it didn't quite work the way we thought, which was, really made us feel better, but it didn't give us any good content. But it did tell us that folks, for the most part, get it. Now, I spend some time on social media looking at things, and I see folks that are pretty darn certain that cows are killing the world, that we've got to quit eating meat because we're all gonna burn up here if we don't and stop. And I look at that and I think one of the questions I often ask is, where did you get your animal science degree, or your range science degree, or your biology degree? Where did that come from? And more often than not, they don't have that tie to agriculture, which again, we're only 2%. So folks don't have that anymore. And that's on us to help educate, but it's also on them to educate themselves and not fall for those where they're getting the information from organizations or sources that have an agenda.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
An anti-animal ag agenda.
Right. And you talked about educating there. You're really good. You have your own podcast. Tell us about the podcast.
But Tune Into the Land is our podcast. It's once a month, and we're in our 5th season.
Oh, wow.
And it has just been an interesting experience. I like to say that the guests are wonderful. The host is like, but the guests are great.
The host.
The guests are great. And so it's once a month. When it gets released. Encourage folks to take a listen. I said we've had Dr. Mittlander on there before as a guest, and it's really great content. So it's a shameless plug, but thank you for opening the door to that.
We love shameless plugs. No, you're a wonderful host. You're really, really good, because you ask the questions that a lot of us have, which I think is great, because I'm like, I would have asked that too. I want to know about that. And you mentioned it there. Tell us a little bit about the documentary, that you can't see them from the road, and what that title means too, why you chose that title.
Sure. Well, the vision for the film was actually Alyssa Rowland, our communications director. And she came to me several years ago and said, I've got an idea. And I just kind of go, okay, what is it? And because we've always done some short videos, 6-7 minute videos, and they've been wonderful. But it's hard to tell a lot of information in a short 5 minutes, 6 minutes. So she said, I want to tell a story of what is really going on that people can't see. The work that these ranchers are doing up in the mountains, in the pastures, somewhere outside the view of the general public. The wildlife that they support, the local food that they produce, the culture, and all these benefits. And then so we had 5 ranches that we showcased, 4 on which we have easements. One in the Bay Area, which showcases the local food, and one in the Central Valley, South Central Valley, Kern County, that has wonderful wildlife, an hour from LA. Another one in Kern County with amazing cultural resources on it, Native American resources, including a 2,000-year-old pictograph that the landowner found one day while hiking. And then another one that we were trying to get an easement on. So it talks about those 5 ranches, shows those, and aptly titled, You Just Can't See Them from the Road. And we were talking to a director, a Hollywood director, recently, who watched the film, and he said, you know, that title is perfect. He said, I watched it and I'm driving through LA, and then I get some hills, and I looked up there and I thought, you know what, that's perfect title for that film, because I kind of know now, I've seen the film, what's going on up there, but everybody else around here has not a clue about the work that these landowners, these ranchers are doing up in those mountains.
Yeah, it was a great title, and it's a great film too. I think I asked you at the time too, so when's your next film?
Well, that's internal debate.
Okay, all right, we won't push it,
No, it's fine, I maybe I'll win now. For me, actually, what I like to see us do, because right now we're still trying to figure out how to get You Just Can't See Them from the Road in a bigger audience.
Yeah.
You know, we were in the film festival circuits with it. We're in 30-ish film festivals, which is amazing from what we're told, including a dozen plus awards, 15 awards.
Wow.
Now, and we've shown some private screenings throughout the state, but getting that out there to a wider audience where that message needs to get. Those folks in LA and San Francisco and Silicon Valley and all these areas that they don't know what's going on out there because they can't see them from the road. See how I did that? Mm-hmm. So that audience we're trying to figure that out. Yeah. In the meantime, I think that one of the areas that circling back to the misinformation that's out there about livestock, I think that's something that needs to be told. And I'd like us to and we are considering, if we did that, what would that look like? Mm-hmm. We're not in the film production business, and we got lucky with the one we did. We did it on a pretty tight budget, and we still came out with an amazing film. We have to figure out how to fund it, but if we can figure that part out, I would love to do another one, because we've seen the value that film has produced for us, even without getting it out there on a streaming service. So if we can start doing another one, I think that would be a great ROI for us, and not just for the organization itself, but telling that story, because that's the information that has to be told out there.
Yeah, screening it here last year, it was amazing to see, and just the response too. People were like, "Oh yeah, that is an amazing film," and they wanted more. You know, it's like, okay, when's your next one? You're like, well, I'm not in like the movie production business, but we'll see. We'll see if we can get there. But you know, you talked there too about what Dr. Mittlener often says is doing good things and talking about them. Sometimes we're not the best about doing that, but that is important to tell folks what we're doing. And speaking of Dr. Mittlener, you chose him for a very prestigious award. Tell us about the award and why you selected him for it.
I'd be very happy to. So the Rangeland Trust presents 2 awards every year. One of them is the Conservationist of the Year, which goes to typically one of our landowner partners and the great work that they do. And then the other one is a Conservation Impact Award. And that goes to somebody who has exemplified great work for the industry, whether it's conservation or the livestock industry. And this year, our recipients for the Conservationist of the Year went to Mike and Julie Sardella up in Tuolumne County, who've done an amazing job with their easement and being cheerleaders for our organization, the work that they're doing with CAL FIRE on burns and other NRCS and other activities up there. They're wonderful people. The conversation around who to select for the Conservation Impact Award lasted about 3 seconds, because that's how long it took to say Dr. Mittler. And everybody went, yes, absolutely. The work that Frank and the Clear Center have done on the science behind the impact of livestock grazing and production, and the misinformation that's out there, and what he's done to counter that. You know, the UN report, Livestock's Long Shadow, which was absolutely ridiculous. And for him to go, time out, you blew this, people. You screwed up this science big time. And here it is. And we go from, we were 18% down to less than 4%, and beef production's at 2%. So what a difference that makes. So again, it's that reliance on facts and data and science to tell the truth. Davis and Dr. Mittler and the Clear Center have just done an amazing job at that. And so that award is very well deserved. We're very proud to be able to give that to him.
And for him to come out and say that, you know what I mean? That's huge for Frank. You know, that was such a big moment. Yeah, we're excited too. We're thrilled that he won that award, and we couldn't be more pleased about that. What are some of the challenges you see moving forward for California rangelands and for ranches here in California? What do you see some of the challenges?
That's an open-ended question.
I know. For the next decade, say too. You know, I mean, what?
Where do I start? There's really many facets to that. I'll start at the ranching industry, ranching side of things, in a general sense. It is hard to do business in this state. It's really hard to be in agriculture in this state. It's the #1 ag state in the country. But we don't really get that recognition from our policymakers all the time. Some are wonderful. We have an amazing Secretary of Food and Agriculture. But there's others that don't have that tie, that don't get it. I want to go back for a second to where I mentioned the man on the street interviews we did. And this kind of explains this. One gentleman that we interviewed had just moved from Nebraska. And we asked the question, what's your opinion of ranchers and farmers in California? And he says, you know, I came from the Midwest. And back there, people don't get elected unless they support agriculture. It's all about agriculture. He says, I'm in Nebraska. This is California. This is much bigger, #1 farm state in the country. That attitude is not existent here. And it's one of those epiphany moments when you go, you know what, I never thought of that. But you know what, you're right. And that kind of tells that challenge from a political standpoint, a policy standpoint, because every little thing that is done, it's another cut. Another little cut here, and you go, ow, that hurt, but we'll survive. Well, here's another one. Pretty soon it's that death by 1,000 cuts. And when we start, it's really hard to run and manage and produce food and fiber at $7, $8 diesel. Everything runs on diesel. Whether your tractor or you're hauling to the market, or the big rigs are hauling it off to the grocery store, that's hard to do in California. And that alone is difficult. So where do we rein in the regulatory issues? There was a study that Cal Poly, talking about, you know, science and academia, Cal Poly did a study of lettuce production in the Salinas Valley. And they looked at it year 1, I forgot which year it was. Then 18 years later, they looked at it again. In that 18-year period, the cost of complying with government regulations went up 1,400% in 18 years. Just the cost of complying with regulatory issues. That's nuts. So those challenges really add up to, how do we keep ranchers ranching when they face that type of an environment? Fortunately, right now the markets are favorable, but they're not always that way. And I'm sure, you know, at some point they'll turn around again. So I'm really concerned about the ag industry in overall, because of the environment in this state. Now, from a Rangeland Trust standpoint, Like I mentioned, we've got 250,000 acres, 100 ranching families wanting to do this. The state has a 30 by 30 goal, conserve 30% of the state's lands by 2030. And that sounds fine, but they're about 4 million acres short as of right now from hitting that goal. Our organization can conserve another 250,000 acres like that if the funding was available. We're fighting and kicking and crawling and scratching for every dollar we can. That's why I have a waiting list. It's because I have to get the funding to make this happen. So having a goal is great, but you don't put the resources behind it, it's hard to get there. So my fear is, someone asked me one time, a reporter asked me years ago, what kept me up at night? And what really does is if we miss an opportunity to keep a family on the ranch because we can't find the funding, and they have to make a decision: do they sell? Do they subdivide it? What happens? And that's hard. That's what keeps me up at night. I can't say there's none, but there is a great sense of relief and satisfaction when we close a project and we happen to be with the landowner or talking to them, and you can hear or see that relief in their eyes and their voices, and that joy that they were able to accomplish that conservation goal, and they're able to keep that land in the family and pass it down, because now they don't have to worry about the developer at their door. And that is so worth it for all the challenges that we have as an organization. Getting those conserved, when we do pull it off, that's incredible.
Well, we'll end on a happy note. What's your greatest hope moving forward?
That the money fairy says, here you go, here's what you need. Yeah. You tell us what you need, here's a check. Get that. And we always kind of joke about that. What if, and not to pick on Jeff Bezos, but let's say he turned his couch cushion over and he found $250,000. This is about what it would take to wipe out our waiting list. $250,000 is not a lot of money for him. And he says, here's a check. So Jeff, if you're listening, my number is. So that would be great. It'd be awesome, and we've got the ability to get that done. What'll happen though, Tracy, is then my phone will start ringing, and all those other landowners are going, I want to do this too, which is a great problem to have.
I would, yep.
I just have to find, then I have to go to Elon and say, okay, Jeff did this.
You're going to pit them against each other. That's what we're going to have to do.
Come on, guys.
Well, we know they're listening. We know they're watching. So we'll just ask. So thank you, Michael. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate the work that you do. Honestly, you do amazing work.
Well, it's a team that we have. It's not only it's our staff, it's our board, it's our donors, it's our landowner partners. It's a family that the Rangeland Trust is, and we can't do that without the support of folks like you and the Clear Center that back us up. And it's something that I am so honored to be part of this organization. I mean, we've got, like I said, amazing staff and an amazing board, and I couldn't think of doing anything else that has the rewards that this organization provides.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Michael. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Well,
thank you. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time on Clear Conversations.